EIGRP protocol for IP version 6. Now, if you remember, in EIGRP we used in IP version 4, the concept of EIGRP again is exactly the same what we have learned in IP version 4. So it's a combination of distance vector and the link state protocols we call as advanced distance vector protocols. That is something what we call as, or the hybrid protocol. And EIGRP for IP version 6 also supports multi-protocol. Like, it not only supports IP version 4, it supports IPX AppleTalk protocols, and now it also supports IP version 6. That's what we call as EIGRP-6. It's more easy to configure and faster convergence, just like we have IP version 4. Now when it comes to features, the calculation process, metric, everything is exactly the same what we have learned in IP version 4. So before we move on with this, I expect you to know the basic configurations of IP version 4 EIGRP and how the protocol works. So let's try to get into the configuration of EIGRP for IP version 6. Now to verify that, I got a simple topology, the same two routers. We are going to continue, and in these two routers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to configure both the routers in EIGRP with AS number 100. You know, just like we do in we configure EIGRP with autonomous system number. Here also we need to use any one number. So I'm going to say EIGRP 100 for IP version 6. And I want to make sure that router 1 LAN interface should be able to ping to the router 2 LAN interface through EIGRP protocol. So to make this possible, let us see how to configure. So the syntax is more similar to IP version 4. Like in case of IP version 4, what we do is we need to go to router and we say EIGRP. We have to define one number, and that's what we call as autonomous system number. And this number must be same on both the routers in order to establish the neighbor relationship and to exchange the routes and to communicate. So if this number mismatch, let's say if I give 100 and 200 on the other side, they will not form the neighborship. So the AS number must match if you want to have a successful neighbor relationship between both the routers. And then we need to give no auto summary anyway. It's to disable that, and the network command, whatever the network, let's say 10 network, to advertise our interfaces. Now in case of IP version 6 also we do similar kind of thing. So on the router 1, I'm going to try to configure as per my scenario on the router 1. We need to go to config mode, and inside the config mode we need to enable the protocol IPv6 router EIGRP 100. Now this command is more equivalent to the first command in IP version 4. The only difference is we start with IPv6 router EIGRP 100. So once you give this command, we go to the router mode. Now once we are in the router mode, we need to give a command called no shutdown. Now this is something extra command which we generally found. We didn't found this kind of command in the previous protocols, no shutdown command. Now what exactly this no shutdown command do is, it does the same kind of job what we do in a physical interface. Like in our physical interface, we have to give no shutdown command in order to make the interface up, because by default each and every physical interface of the iOS routers is shutdown state. Now similar way, even though you configure EIGRP, by default EIGRP process will be in shutdown state, and if you don't give no shutdown, the EIGRP process will not come up. Now this is something, remember, it is mandatory. So if you don't give no shutdown command, in that case the EIGRP neighborship will not work, because the EIGRP process will be in shutdown state and it will not initiate any messages on the other side. And then there is one more extra command I have seen in different iOS versions. So route ID concept. Now the route ID concept is same like IP version 4 OSPF route ID, but I have seen in some of the iOS route ID becomes optional. Sometimes it is optional in some of the iOS, not compulsory. In some iOS versions I have seen, if you don't use this route ID, probably it might not take the EIGRP, it may not establish a neighborship. So keep this route ID as optional here, but it varies depending upon the iOS versions. Okay, so as of now I'm giving no shutdown command is something mandatory in any iOS versions, and route ID depends upon scenario. So if it takes automatic route ID, in that case it may not be required. Okay, so now here one important thing we need to remember, no shutdown command is something we need to remember. And the next thing, to advertise the interfaces. So we don't have any network command in IP version 6, just like we do it in EIGRP or RIP. We need to go to the interface. What is the interface here? interface F0 by 0 inside the config mode. So modes are important, and inside the interface mode we need to say IPv6 EIGRP 100. Now similar way, what is the other interface I'm going to use? Interface S1 by 0, that is my WAN interface, IPv6 EIGRP 100. Now this command enables enable the advertisements of all the IPv6 addresses present on that interface through EIGRP AS number 100. Now you can see this part is more exactly the same way how we did in OSPF or RIP protocol, enabling the protocol under the interface. But when it comes to the routing configurations, no shutdown command is something we need to remember. So that is something we are not much used to, that no shutdown command under the router mode, but here you will find that. Let's try to get into the configuration here. Try to configure the same two routers. I already have IPv6 OSPF running because of my previous lab. If you remember, I enabled OSPF in our previous lab, so I'm going to remove that OSPF before I get into my EIGRP. So whenever you are doing any lab, just make sure that you're not running any other protocol which might conflict with your routing configurations. So if I verify show IPv6 protocols, I don't see a single protocol running on my routers. Now I want to ensure that router 1, router 2 should form the neighborship, should exchange the routes through EIGRP protocol. So first thing, I'll go with the config mode. I'll say route IPv6 router EIGRP 100. You can see, you can always try question marks to find the next possible options. It's the same thing like what we have done. And no shutdown command is something mandatory. And then you can see this iOS here, it's not taking the route ready command. There's no route ready command, which means I think it works without route ready command, but in some iOS versions you will find route ready command also will be displayed in that. Okay, so I'm not using a route ready command because of my iOS version here, it's not supporting, and hopefully it will work with EIGRP here. Now to advertise, I need to say IPv6 EIGRP 100 under the interface. And what is the other interface I'm using? S1 by 0 IPv6 EIGRP 100. And for verification, we can use show IPv6 protocols. I can see the K values, whatever we have learned in IP version 4, it's going to be the same. Administrator distance also will be the same, and the maximum hop counts, variance, everything is same. So there's no specifications wise or the features wise, the functionality wise, it's going to be the same protocol. So we are running EIGRP 100. Okay, so route ready, no usable route ready found. You'll see this. No usable route ready found. Now this might create a problem, so what I'll do is I'll go to my interface, I'll simply configure IPv4 address, because this iOS version is not taking the route ready. So what I'll do is I expect the route ready to be taken automatically. So for that I'm going to configure IP address something 1.1.1.1.255.0.0.0 something, just to ensure that it's going to take the route ready. You can see now it has taken the route ready. Now in case if you're not able to find the route ready command in some of the iOS versions, I suggest you to just go and configure an IPv4 address on any of the interface. And most of the today's network, we generally have IP version 4 running, so very hardly you don't find IP version 4 in any network unless you are totally starting with a new IPv6 network. So now you can see, so this is very important thing you need to keep in mind, because route ready is something, it's optional. Why? Because if the route ready command is not supported, it will take automatically but from any of the IPv4 address as a route ready, like highest IP of the loopback, or if there's no loopback, the highest IP of the physical interface. But no shutdown command is something mandatory you have to give. Okay, so it's always the best practice to check out whether it has taken the route ready or not. And EIGRP is running here, AS 100. Okay, so before giving the route ready, you have seen this kind of message, so you need to watch out for these things. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing, IPv6 router EIGRP 100, and here also I'll create one loopback interface just for route ready purpose, 2.2.2.2.255.0.0.0. So I'm going to say IPv6 router EIGRP 100, and then we had to give no shutdown command, and route ready command is not supported in this iOS. And then we need to advertise IPv6 EIGRP 100, and what is the other interface? IPv6 EIGRP 100. So once you finish up the advertisements, now I'm expecting some message coming up, the neighborship message. Show IPv6 protocols. You can see these two interfaces are running or advertised in EIGRP 100, and I'm expecting the neighborship. So how to verify the neighborship? Show IPv6 EIGRP neighbors. I'm not able to see the neighborship still. Let me check out, did I miss any of the commands in your router 1? I think so. Let's verify once again what are the commands we have given. So IPv6 router EIGRP 100, I think I forgot to give no shutdown command. Let me try to give once again router EIGRP 100 no shutdown command. So the problem might be like on the router 1, if I give show IPv6 protocols, now here you don't see any single interface displayed here. Now the problem might be I have given these interfaces before the router. Let me try one more time. So I'm going to give interface 0x0 IPv6 EIGRP 100 and interface S1/0 IPv6 EIGRP 100. So if I give show IPv6 protocols, I'm not able to see any interfaces displayed here. That's something what I'm expecting. IPv6 EIGRP 100. Okay, you can see the neighborship has come up. So what I did is just now, I tried to remove the IPv6 EIGRP just now, and then I tried the same thing again, reconfiguring the same thing with the same command, no shutdown command. But if you see here, I have given a router ID command. When I tried with the iOS help, it was not taking, but when I typed the complete command, so when I said router EIGRP 100, so I have given, you can see when I use tab button or question mark, it's not going to show me, but if I use the router ID, it's going to take it. So probably you need to check out these commands. Sometimes some of the iOS supports these options. I have seen some of the iOS, they have router ID command. So this iOS, it's not showing in the option. So once I configure the router ID manually, it has established a neighbor relationship. Okay, so remember, so I can say that no shutdown and router ID is something mandatory commands we need to give, and unless EIGRP automatically pick up any of the router ID, in that case it becomes optional, but it's always the best practice to give the router ID manually in case of EIGRP and then no shutdown command. And verification, show IPv6 EIGRP neighbors, show IPv6 EIGRP neighbors. You can see router 1 is forming the neighborship with link local address. Like instead of neighbor address, it shows link local address on that interface, and remaining output is exactly the same as IP version 4 EIGRP. And then to verify the routing table, we can use show IPv6 route EIGRP. I can see the route of router 2 LAN interface learned through D, nothing but D represents EIGRP. And if I try to ping to the router 2 LAN interface, I should be able to ping to the router 2 LAN interface, you can see. Now there are a few important things when you configure EIGRP for IP version 6 need to remember is, the first thing is these two commands especially. No shutdown command is something mandatory, and it's the best practice to use the router ID also, because in case if it is not able to pick the router ID, in that case it will not show you any message saying that unable to pick the router ID, please configure the router ID manually. It's not going to show any messages. In that case, definitely you get into this kind of issues like we just came across. So it's always the best practice to give the manual router ID. In case if it is not able to pick, so the best way, just give the router ID manually. And then to advertise the interfaces, just go to the interface and we need to enable IPv6 EIGRP, whatever the AS number, and this AS number must match on both the sides in order to have a successful neighbor relationship.